everybody, welcome to the Streaming Wars. I'm joined as always by the ravishing Dan Garraway, and we have a privilege today to talk to Kim Hurwitz, Chief Marketing Officer of FITE, the premier digital network for global sports. Kim, I'm sorry about the background. We had to strip your background.
I know. I was on a spaceship. It looked really good, but people can just use their imagination.
And I thought I'd adjust the foreground, wear a floral shirt, Hawaiian shirt, got some sunglasses.
Very tropical.
Yeah, I'm burning up out here. Actually, it's probably 85 degrees. I'm sweating, so I'll probably be wet.
This is actually more of a Zoom background than is normally a Zoom background.
Yeah.
It's so nice, and it's actually your house, which is lovely.
Yeah, but here's a fun fact that nobody knows except for a select few. So I met Kim back when I was at Float Left and she was at Film On. And the fun fact is this yard to this house that I'm sitting in now was Float Left's first office. So we were some brand new startup that we created a web development company. 2 months into it, decided, okay, we're not doing web development anymore. We're going to focus on building streaming video apps, which made no sense to our family, made no sense to our client. Apps on TV, what's happening? And we had no idea either. We thought it was cool as an opportunity for publishers to create their own networks. And here we are 10 years later. And that's how I got into this space. Like, I come from the internet. I come from software and the internet side of things. And as we all know, it's just merged into one big but small industry. I guess any new venture, I ultimately end up back at the same house. Kim, for those that aren't aware, can you tell us a bit about FITE TV? Or actually for me, before you go into it, FITE TV versus FITE. Like, I would say FITE, but I know sometimes FITE TV is referenced.
Yeah, we've been around about 4 years now, and we did kind of go by FITE TV for the first half of our existence. And really, I guess maybe ever since I've been on board, I've been there almost a year. We just wanted to make it FITE, F-I-T-E. We publicly announced that we've got 2.5 million registered users. These are people who've signed up. That doesn't mean that they necessarily order everything. Like any company, there's some really passionate users. Then there's a lot of stuff in the middle. And then there's some people who like every once in a while, they buy something or whatever. But it's steadily growing. And of course, there are some people that just will come in and they'll buy one thing and then we won't see them. We're happy with our growth. We were noted by Digital Trends as a top app, both on iPhone and Android. We were in the company of Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, YouTube, FITE, and Crunchyroll.
That's good company.
I'm happy to be in that company. We are broadening our horizons. We specialize in combat sports. It's kind of what we're known for, but we've been branching out into everything from motocross to music to film premieres, and it'll probably go beyond that. So we're thinking we're really kind of a sports and entertainment special events type platform. We're actually busier than ever. I know that this environment has given a lot of challenges to a lot of people, and we have not escaped that, of course. We live in the same world everyone else does, but we're trying to use this as a way to expand and maybe find opportunities and capitalize on opportunities.
According to the Multi-Screen Index, the top 10 traditional MVPDs lost over 2 million subscribers in the first quarter, many of those looking for cheaper alternative products. Obviously, FITE Sports being one of those. You are heavy on live sports, and I know you guys have done some great pivots.
Yeah, we broadcast normally 1,000 live events a year. A lot of those are on furlough, for lack of a better expression, But there are some that are still out there working within the stipulations, and we're not the only brand that's doing some live events, but taking into mind any federal and state regulations or wherever the content is coming from, such as WrestleMania, which was an event that happened in early April. We were a carrier of that as well. They came from Florida. A lot of that was pre-recorded. Some of it was done, everything's done with the proper social distancing and no audiences or 10 people in the audience or whatever, essential people. And I think you'll see a lot of events that will find areas either in the U.S. or outside of the U.S. where their local or national governments have allowed them to kind of begin. So we carry also things such as news programs that can be done one-on-one. We have UFC Hall of Famer, the great Boss Rutan, that does a daily workout show that's live from his studio. And we do a lot of pro wrestling, as actually, at least the bigger leagues like AEW and WWE are doing shows. And there's a show out of Cambodia that does a live show 3 times a week. So there are events, but yeah, it's not to the level of 1,000 events that we're used to. I think things may be changing a little bit, but it's going to be, I think, a slow process. We actually are carrying something called Moto Fight Club, and it's live motocross, and that'll be happening. And in again, using all the parameters that we're allowed to perform and behave in.
Motocross is new for FITE. Is that something you see more of down the road?
I mean, the company of FITE is made up of a lot of industry veterans with experience doing pay-per-view events, special events, whether the vertical is combat sports or movies or music or really any kind of sport. Our kind of tagline is, if it happens, it's on FITE. You're going to see all sorts of interesting things later this year.
Dan, there was a story. You had Mick Foley in your car. Mick Foley being the professional wrestler, Cactus Jack, Dude Love, Mankind, Mandible Claw. What's this about? Why are you driving Mankind around in a car?
When I first heard that Kim was going to be joining us on this, I was, and if you don't know already, I'm obviously the sidekick, the comedy sidekick. So I have to go back to my stories yonder in order to be funny. The story yonder this occasion was actually around Mick Foley, who I didn't even know who that was. It was in London. I was a camera operator back in the day, so I did actually do a lot of cage fighting. Not me, of course, because of this, because there's nothing there, but I did have to, yeah, and henceforth no press ups as well. But I did go back and bring out my my world of that time where I was working on a shoot for a Q&A session with Mick Foley, who happened to be in the UK doing some work, and I was shooting him, not knowing who he was. At the end of the shoot, they said, just as I was getting in my car, they said, "Can you just stay around for a few minutes because we're not quite sure where Mick's going next?" And I was like, "Well, I've only been booked for 4 hours, so maybe." I was kind of keen to go home. It was actually a Saturday, and then they were like, "Well, give it a few minutes." They called me back and said, "Yeah, Mick can't get to the next part of the day. It's the other side of London, and he has to open a shopping centre or something, and I like a mall." And I was like, "Yeah." It's like, "If we paid you to the end of the day, will you take him there?" And so I got in my Fiat Brava 2002 1.6, and this very large man, if you've met Mick Foley, you'll know he's absolutely huge. Got into the passenger seat. I kind of had to jam him in the door, closing the door on top of him, and got in to drive him along. The car was actually leaning like this throughout the entire journey. It was a massive traffic jam, so it took us 3 hours to get to this place. He opened the shopping centre. Everyone was like, "Yeah, Mick Foley." And I was shooting it because I was like, "Well, I might as well shoot it whilst I'm going with him." And then they were like, rang me again, and they said, "Now he has to go to a Q&A session. Can you take him there?" So I ended up spending the whole day with Mick Foley, and he's eating sweets, telling me all these stories about all of these times with his other wrestling partners. I mean, it was really good time. But I didn't really seriously understand his celebrity status until he got to the gas station, where I was just going in paying for gas, and the guy was like, "Is that Mick Foley in your car?" Yeah. And then people start swarming around the car. It was a very bizarre day, but he was a really good guy. I follow him on Twitter now, and it's interesting that you mentioned him. He's doing some book writing, it seems, and making the most out of the COVID times. But it is like interesting that I heard from him, and I've been involved in fight sports for a while. The community around it is so strong. You know, I did a lot of shooting of Cage Warriors, which was eventually bought by UFC. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're going to do anything in OTT, you know, you really have to have a strong strategy. We talked about, obviously, people entering the market, perhaps not knowing where their consumer is today. We all know some of those names, and there's criticisms and everything else. I think if you enter the market with a really strong understanding of the consumer, you can make it work. Everything can sort of be based off of that core element of just you being clear with your consumer. Mm-hmm. That fight sports is right for that, and I think that's why FITE stands such a good player partner in the market for making that work. The community around it cares about the people. As soon as people have fought, I was always amazed that people come off the stage, and rather than continuing with the bravado of like aggression, they're often saying, "What you just did there was really interesting. Like that move, I just didn't see it coming." And stuff like that. I'm like, wow, this is a community that really encourages each other to understand how they can make their sport better. And for that reason, I think it'd be interesting to see FITE develop past the content into perhaps more of those community elements as well. Is that something that you guys have started experimenting with, and how much of that do you do at the moment?
Well, we do a lot of that on our social channels, obviously, which is kind of tailor-made for that sort of thing. We always have live chat on events as well.
Okay.
And so you get a lot of that. And actually, you know, we love the idea of creating a community, and we will probably, you know, we do a lot of interviews and have a lot of shoulder content that kind of lets you dive deeper because people are into it. We also like to have plenty of historical information on the site about fighters. Like if there's a certain fighter that you love, you can follow them internally on the FITE platform, so that anything that comes up that we acquire, whether it's an archive show or something new, you go, oh, I love Dwayne Johnson, I love The Rock, I love anything he does. Then anything that would come on from the past, oh, did you know he used to be with Impact Wrestling and see him back in the day, and then that kind of stuff comes up. So there's certainly some of that.
I think you guys have a great product. The way you guys do notifications, alerts, emails, I love this strategy I see. Can you talk about the credit system you guys created?
Yeah, we've been doing this off and on for a couple of years, so it's not even a brand new thing. What is a little bit new is we do have an SVOD option, a subscription option to get what we call FITE Plus. This gives you past pay-per-view events, so they're high quality programming from over 25 different leagues, and you can watch it as you like. We work on all devices, of course, and for $4.99 a month, you get access to just a tremendous amount of content in the combat sports world. And when I say combat, that also includes other things, like we have things like jousting and stuff like that. I mean, and then we'll have some also documentary type things and other types of content on there, in addition to just straight fighting. It included with your subscription, to your point, are $2 worth of credits every month that add up. So similar to a Starbucks rewards program. It's kind of our FITE rewards program. And it basically stays in your account. I mean, even if you go dormant, it's not like these ever expire. They stay with you as long as you keep using that same account, credentials. And it's, after a year, you've got enough to buy a whole pay-per-view just from that credit. We also do occasionally, and it's by event specific, but sometimes if you download the app, we'll throw in, here's another, $5 worth of FITE bucks that go into your account, just to incentivize people for using the system. We want to reward their loyalty to us. And
is there any other people doing this I've seen Google Play Points recently, which I didn't really know about. And to be fair, I spoke to some people who seemed to be at Google who didn't even know about it. And I kind of interested to hear it hasn't yet gone international, so it still sounds like it's early days in that concept. Sounds like it's working for you, and I can see the community around FITE Sports is one that is completely dedicated. Generally speaking, we've been speaking about this before, about how they do care about the community around the shows. Well, did you guys take a note out of another book on this? Have you seen success with it elsewhere?
Well, I think the airlines have been doing it for a long time. it's just as simple, and Starbucks, I think I mentioned them again, because I know that works on me. So, I think that people sometimes they gravitate to brands because they like what you're offering, like combat sports. Okay, I like combat sports. I'll go watch over here. Other times people, they stick with a brand because they're comfortable with it and it has great UI. People who love Macs and Apple, they're in that, they love, they love that stuff. People have certain cars that they like, or people have, a certain kind of clothing or perfume that they wear. People find affinity, and we want to be an affinity for them for their entertainment.
I always love the reward and incentivization. I don't think enough companies in our industry do that. I often talk about how the idea of how media companies should think more like software companies, and I think more should incorporate it. I often use the analogy, and my analogies are sometimes good, sometimes really terrible, but the 10 push-up analogy, meaning if I'm sitting at a lunch with Dan and Dan says, hey, Kirby, drop and give me 10 push-ups, I'm going to tell him no. But if he says, I'll give you $10, I'm going to do it. So
I remember that.
Yeah. So that's a takeaway from this.
What if he does 10 push-ups and says, can you do better? Competition, you got to do something to motivate somebody, right? So it could be you pay them, you reward them, you challenge them.
Yeah, I've got the skinniest arms known to the human race, so I think I'm going to lose out on anything like that, unfortunately.
There is something written about you on the WIREWAX website. It says what can you tell us what it says? I just know when I read it, I laugh, but I can't. It's like you have the body of a sack of potatoes. I think that's what it says. And if not, I'm sorry, I just said that.
No, but thank you for pointing that out. That is. It says Dan is the co-founder of WIREWAX, working globally on growth and strategic partnerships with a creative brain and the body of a small sack of potatoes.
Even a small sack of potatoes.
I haven't even got to a big sack.
Did Steve write that? Because I feel like Steve's is like it's like, wow, Steve, and then we got sack of potatoes guy.
Yeah, I actually wrote it, which is even more bizarre and self-inflicting of harm. But it was kind of, I was entertaining myself. I'm actually surprised that you've even spotted it. So that's good to know that somebody actually read the profile. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah. So yeah, if anybody's on the About page in the last month, it's been me. Check your analytics.
But, people like humor, and especially self-deprecating humor. So that's pretty smart of you to put that up there.
Speaking of the past, Kim, you have a big background over multiple decades, 25 years plus in this space. But prior to that, theater arts background. You went to school for theater arts. But also what some people may not know about you is that you're also a rock star, lead singer in multiple bands. I think you were signed by Warner Brothers for a little bit. And also you're a black belt in Shotokan.
Yeah, I love my karate, and I've really just started it in the last 10, 11 years. So I was kind of late to the store of doing that, but my two kids are both black belts. My son's actually a second degree black belt, and they both started when they were 5 years old. And, I watched it so much, I kind of thought, I could do that. I've spent years watching them train, and actually did help. And I just found it's just the best workout ever. And I love sparring, and I still train. My daughter and I were actually on track to probably test for our knee dan, which is the second degree belt, sometime this summer. But then COVID happened, and so our dojo they're doing some virtual stuff, but we're kind of waiting for things to get back to some sense of normalcy. And music always been a love of mine. I just love art and creative people.
And your bands, you were, and I believe this is the one you were in with your husband, Tall Walls.
Yeah.
And you rock the stage, absolutely, by the way.
Thank you very much.
One thing I want to make sure that we talk about is the affiliate program you set up, which is another customer acquisition tool, and you guys put a lot of thought around that, and that's another thing I think people can learn from FITE and what you guys are doing.
I think a lot of marketers are probably very familiar with the affiliate programs, and I never really used them all that much. I mean, I was familiar with CJ, back in the day. I would say when I first started getting into digital, it was probably around 2006. Roku and Netflix, by the way, used to be the same company. A lot of people don't know that. And they kind of broke off and they went in two different directions. Right around then, I was doing a bunch of stuff in early digital, and I heard about CJ back then. I think they may have been one of the first affiliate programs, but I never really used them. And then when I came to FITE, I thought I got to get more into affiliate marketing. And so we launched last November, and it's just like one of my favorite things. One of the best tools that we've done, very cost effective, easy to roll out. And basically it allows anyone to sign up through our program that's powered by CJ. And it gives you access to all these banners and things that promote our events on FITE. And if people go through your links and they buy it, we pay you a commission. And it's all tracked by the third party. And so everything's completely on the up and up. They'll tell you exactly how many people click through those links, and they pay out the commissions.
In your direct-to-consumer service, you don't have a sales force. Your sales force is essentially your user flows through the product wherever it's available. With the affiliate stuff, you essentially just turn in any loyalist into your sales force.
I really love PR and media. That's just kind of an area of the business I just love, because it's just kind of this ongoing narrative. And my father was a writer for the LA Times all his life. And so I really have a lot of respect for journalism and people who write. It's just fun to play with. And a lot of the major media outlets are also FITE affiliates. So, I think it's something, it's a recommendation. If someone was doing something with marketing and saying, what's one of the most cost-effective things I can do besides the usual, get out on social media and send out emails and stuff like that, do partnerships and whatever, the affiliate program's a great way.
And you guys are pretty dialed in with understanding all the key metrics, customer lifetime value and customer acquisition costs, and exactly what you're doing in that regard.
Yeah, the company is very, very good, really from the CEO on down, very focused on the ROAS, the return on ad spend, and, everything else. So everything that we do, we analyze. And we even have a built-in engine that kind of tells us, based on very different parameters, we know like how well an event is going to do just from any data that comes in. We go, oh, the engine is predicting this is going to happen. This is going to happen. Oh, we're on track to do this. And darn it, if it's not almost always right. So we kind of know how much money to put behind something, and we know what tactics are going to push it. And because we are a global platform, we sell to over 160 countries. We kind of know what we can price things at. We know, this event, you need to price it for this amount for India. And for over here in Europe or the DACH region, this is the amount. Oh, this is Scandinavia. Well, this is their GDP. So this is what is a good price for them. So little things like that. And I think that's why we do a lot of partnerships with major brands. So a lot of major companies don't have this kind of intel.
So when I say most media companies, you need to think like software companies. Wasn't FITE kind of created from a software company for this media?
There was a company called iMedia Share that was founded by the current CEO and CFO. And they got together with various people, including Mike Weber, who's our COO, and said, why don't we specialize? Because when they first started out, they did kind of general streaming. They have a couple patents on how you can launch an app and just cast it to any IP connected TV. So if you didn't have an Apple TV box, it would basically on your iPhone behave as if you did, and it would just cast whatever you had, use that as a remote. And so now it's a little more common that people can do that. But I mean, they were doing this, 10 years ago. So it was pretty novel. But they found that if we concentrated on combat sports is kind of what we chose, and the pay-per-view model, it was just a smarter way for us to kind of get a name.
Yeah, I remember, it's definitely over 10 years ago, I had a conversation with Matodi. That was certainly before Chromecast. I would have to fact check Apple TV, but casting wasn't, it was a blip on the radar at that point.
Yeah, and he was certainly one of the founding people of that company too.
So according to cordcutting.com, 44 million US adults now use borrowed accounts, basically mooching subscription services with whoever's login info they can get. What's your take on mooching? I know a lot of brands consider it, allocate it towards a marketing expense, brand awareness. It is something that could be resolved. What's your take on that?
Well, and it's interesting you say this, because I did read one of your missives that you posted out on LinkedIn in this situation with this question. And I think what the information you had found, I thought was very much in line with my opinion about it too, which is that you could completely clamp down on this if you wanted to. There's several things you could do to set up to prevent a lot of sharing, which is just in your tech spec. You could make it so only, one or two streams simultaneously are allowed to function. And there are some brands that do 3 streams or 2 streams or 5 streams or unlimited streams. That's one way. Another thing is you could make it email based, but also a 2-factor authentication. So not only do you have to log in, but now they're going to text you. And so unless you get that text and you have a phone that's aligned to the text, you're going to not get that number. And so only authorized people will be able to go there. You could add another layer to that. When it comes to account sharing and stuff like that, we're not, although we have FITE Plus and we do have some subscription services, our main business is still pay-per-view. So it's a little bit different than, say, in Netflix. And I think the Netflix, Ted Sarandos and some of the other people there have even said, well, we might, look at this as an issue that we need to correct at some point, but not right now. I think there is some marketing and awareness. I think some of these people that share accounts probably eventually do convert and become paying users. It's really up to you to just give a great product and inspire them to do so. If you get to a point where you feel like, wow, this is hurting our business, then you have to do something about it.
Yeah, and important, as much dollars as companies are losing. I forget the Netflix number. It's not fair to presume that all of those people, if they're not able to share accounts, are just going to sign up anyway.
Right, exactly. They probably won't, a certain percentage. So is it better? They don't sell advertising, so that's a little bit different. I think if you have a hybrid model where, some subscription and some is ads, then, maybe you don't care as much as at least I'm selling ads and I'm getting my impression and it's good for my advertisers, if nothing else. And so they'll keep on placing buys.
I mean, obviously you talk a lot about Quibi, but that is a real challenge we've been talking about with Quibi. We're coming with shows that are not known. Yes, they have stars attached to them, which is obviously the star power you're hoping brings them in. But it's difficult for the audience to get started with that content from zero.
Yeah, you've definitely got a good point there. I think that if it's compelling enough, I mean, like, who would have thought that Tiger King would have been so like amazing on Netflix? So I think that sometimes you can come out with something brand new that people just gravitate to, or something like TikTok, where look at the explosion of that platform. Maybe
I saw somebody who works at TikTok post on LinkedIn yesterday saying, I often get asked by brands, how do I get onto TikTok? How do I get my brand onto TikTok? And I answer, you download it from the App Store. I thought it was quite a fun reply.
That's how you can get on. That's how you get a YouTube channel too. You will upload something.
Yeah. I actually think one of the things I've noticed in Netflix at this particular time, which I'm using Netflix a lot more, have always been discovery is the biggest problem facing a lot of OTT generalists, right? I mean, they have so many different categories, so many different types of content that are coming to the fore. And personalization is obviously a buzzword which everyone uses and wants to get into. I think one of the things that I've noticed in the last few weeks being at home and watching a lot of content, obviously, is how Netflix are, I think, using what commissioning editors used to do back in the day. You know, when I was coming into the TV and entertainment industry, commissioning editors and schedulers really planned out how the TV networks would play out for the week, for the month, and sync it in with the sort of public mood. So, for example, a long weekend and a day off, Memorial Day weekend, where are people's brains at? Where are they thinking? Where are they coming from? What the weather is? All of these aspects to how they came to watch their TV were considered. And so that was easy because it was obviously scheduled and it was obviously linear. And I think Netflix might be borrowing some of that thinking in the way they are promoting shows on the app now, because every time I'm going on a Friday or Saturday night, I'm getting something that's upbeat, action, lightweight, easy to watch. And then, you know, during the week when I'm getting something a little bit different, that's a little bit more considered and thoughtful. And I'm wondering whether they're playing with some of the algorithms to take into account where people's minds are at certain times of the day and week. And it's exciting to see, because I think it's better than personalization. Just showing you what you've already watched and what you've liked in the past isn't necessarily going to work.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think Netflix, they've always been a very data-centric company anyway. And just think of the massive reams of data they have acquired over the last 20 years. And, you know, even beginning with their disc mailing business, you know, when they first started, they were learning then, but then, you know, when they launched, you know, their streaming service, which everyone thought was a stupid idea when it first happened, but they've learned so much about people's habits and from all around the world, you know, as they keep launching in new markets. And I think you're absolutely right that they are trying to drive the bus a bit, because they know that, you know, people like certain kinds of premieres, or if there's a trend happening in the world, they're going to capitalize on it. Discovery's always been an issue. I think there's almost too much choice. There's a big glut. There's no shortage of things to watch, but everyone always complains about, let's get together, let's watch a movie, and then we can spend 20 minutes trying to figure out what do we always want to watch, you know. So it's a kind of a fun puzzle to solve, because it's always a problem. Yeah, we've certainly, in our own ecosystem, we know that there are certain things that will do well. And sometimes people, if they're doing an event for the first time, will say, hey, is this a good weekend, or is this a good weekend? You know, well, you don't want to do here because, you know, this is happening on that. And I think sports have done that in boxing and stuff like that for a long, long time. If you remember way back in the day when HBO on Shotokan, they would have the big boxing events, they would make sure that they didn't ever choose the same Saturday night. and they were kind of cooperative about it, because the one or two times they said, well, screw you, I'm going to do that night, even though you're doing it. I did not turn out well. And, that happened a while back when boxing was going up against a UFC event, and they both wanted the same night. I don't know if you remember that back. It was the BMF fight in New York on UFC in early November, and they were going up against a big, I think, a Canelo fight. And it was like, no, we're doing it the same night. And basically the boxing folks, they kind of backed up and they let UFC do their thing, and they delayed their broadcast because they didn't want to compete. So it's not exactly discovery, but it's the same kind of thing. There's, planning is important, and it can be the difference of being successful or not.
Last time I was on Netflix, I saw a new show, never heard of it. It's I forget the title of it now, but it's about a river. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
A river. I don't know. I'm watching so many shows on there. I'm not sure.
Anyway, check it out. It's now streaming.
Is that an advert?
All right. Give me a second.